Welcome to Emotional Sobriety, the next step in recovery, with Dr. Alan Berger and Tom Rutledge. You got to be James Bond about that. You know what I mean? Like you planned to have the hat the whole time. It was never. You're not covering up anything.
That's the whole Zen thing. Embrace the moment like you had planned on it.
Yeah.
And I need to tell a friend that I'm meeting in a few minutes. Is Tom here yet?
You know, Tom is very sick. Hopefully he'll be okay. I'm banking on him being okay, but it's just never nice to hear that, you know, some friend might have COVID. So hopefully he does not.
Oh, no.
Yeah. Well, when I think of emotional sobriety and new possibilities, the first thing that comes to my mind is just a general, like, I could sit in stressful situations, in unpleasant situations, in unpleasant interactions. It's like I could hold my hand closer to the hot stove because my emotional center of gravity is lower. And whereas in my more unregulated addict era, I would just flee, you know, from conflict and challenge. You can't discover the new possibilities unless you're willing to confront the tension, confront the darkness, or the you know. For me, it's a lot of the possibility of falling short of my expectations of myself, realizing that moving forward doesn't mean that everything needs to be perfect.
But see, I think we got to back up a little bit and say, well, how come those possibilities aren't discoverable before? And see, I think that's the real gift of emotional sobriety, is that before our behavior was so determined by these forces that were outside of our awareness, like our emotional dependency. You can call them unconscious if you want, however you want to think about it. But see, we didn't have possibilities before, because if your behavior is driven by those forces, you don't have other possibilities. Your behavior is stereotyped. You're going down a one-way street. There's no other possibilities on that road that you're on. And so the way that I like to think about emotional sobriety is, first of all, we become aware that we are the determined one. And see, nobody wants to see this, because everybody wants to think that they're in control of their lives and they're controlling their destiny, where the truth is we're not. Now, a lot of us, after being beaten to our knees, could surrender to that reality about our alcoholism or addiction. But to surrender to that reality regarding our unmanageable life, and that's what's made our life unmanageable, are these forces that are determining our behavior, that's for many even a tougher pill to swallow than the fact that I'm powerless over my alcoholism or I'm powerless over my addiction. So that's why we talk about the first step, right? Is about admitting our powerlessness over our emotional dependency, our immaturity, and that this has created an unmanageable life. Bill called it an impossible way of life. So that's always the first step, Patrick, is to see that we don't have those possibilities. They're not discoverable with that consciousness that is so grounded in that I need my environment to support me. I need people doing what I want them to do for me to be okay. See, that becomes a very rigid stance in life. And so once I can see that and own that possibility, and that's the paradoxical dimension or aspect of change. Once I own it, then I have the possibility of doing the work that can set me free. And so when we talk about that emotional sobriety is the discovery of new possibilities, that is only once we see that we don't have those possibilities, that we are stuck. And that's why I call it a growth disorder. We're not mentally ill. We're stuck. We're stuck. We haven't grown up. We don't know how to grow up. The culture we live in is immature. How can you grow up beyond what are the messages in this culture that we live in? It's hard. And that's why Emotional sobriety is really a counterculture movement. We are breaking new ground in so many ways, and that's why Bill even referred to it as being rocketed into the fourth dimension. The fourth dimension is where we discover those new possibilities. So I just wanted to put it in that framework.
And I'm glad you did. Welcome, Carol. We have Carol Carter back on the show.
Yes, yay, hooray, hooray.
It's been a year or so, right?
Yes, and I'm so happy to be here.
While the container's hot, wanted to ask Allen, was there a moment where the awareness cracked open for you that those possibilities existed?
I would say it was a series of experiences that started to reveal the deep truth and wisdom to what Bill was referring to as emotional sobriety. And I think over my 53, almost coming up on 54 years in recovery, that the wisdom and truth of what Bill was talking about, and not just Bill, because as a clinical psychologist, I'm pretty well read and familiar with a lot of different psychotherapists and their wisdom and stuff. And what Bill was talking about was really the zeitgeist. It was the spirit of the times back in the 50s. People were looking at this dependency we had and the impact it had. Now, unfortunately, I don't know why. Just like Bill's idea that this would spearhead the next major movement in recovery, in AA, never happened. The truth of it is all of those incredible insights that people like Pearls, Virginia Satir, even Nathaniel Brandon, Viktor Frankl, I mean, the list could go on and on. Erich Fromm, all of these, Karen Horney, all of these brilliant therapists, their ideas have never really penetrated into modern psychotherapy today. People go off in terms of, to me, they're dealing with different aspects of the result of our emotional dependence or our immaturity, but nobody is getting hold of the core issue here. And the core issue is that we are stuck in this idea that somehow I need life to conform to my expectations for me to be okay. And they saw that, man. They challenged it. Pearls challenged it. He talked about our dependency turns us into a slave. Virginia Satir talked about we're always trying to get out of our emotional jail, begging other people to do it for us. I mean, Erich Fromm called it that these infantile grandiosity of our childhood persist into adulthood. Thibault said something very similar to that. Karen Horney talked about it, about how we take our center of gravity and put it outside of ourselves and, hope that somehow somebody's going to come along and save us. I mean, Brandon talks about that. I mean, Viktor Frankl talked about that. I mean, it's over and over again. These men and women saw the truth of this. And now it was like gone. Nobody continued to bring this in. Like, if you look at cognitive behavioral therapy and dialectical cognitive behavioral therapy, probably two of the most popular treatment, even the IFS stuff, they don't see it. They don't talk about this dependency as an issue. They talk about the different parts and how the different parts are in relationship to another, what I think is a great contribution that came out of Gestalt therapy. Fritz was the one who talked about that originally. But nobody is integrating the idea that it's our emotional dependency. Codependence came close to doing that, but not in the depth that I think that Bill really looked at this issue.
I smoked a lot of pot in high school, starting at the age of 17. It was a tool that I reached for as I was drowning to kind of help me to cope. And I'd always thought that my emotional development was arrested around that time, in large part just because of all the drugs I was doing. And I know that played a part, but I think that emotional dysregulation that you're talking about, or the placing the center of gravity outside of myself and into, these expectations I had of the world to give me a cookie. I think that that's as like responsible for, and this happened a lot in my adolescence, and yeah.
Listen, and that's a common thing that people say, well, when I started drinking and using, my development got arrested. I don't think that's right. I don't think that's the reason. I think it happened way before that. I think even if you didn't drink or use,
Yeah.
You'd end up immature, because our culture is still grounded in this very much it's all about me mentality. You see, when you grow up in a culture that's narcissistic, everything is about me. And that is early developmental issues. Every child, they are the center of the universe. They can't even think about the other person having needs and wants and desires. It's all about them and what they need. And they see the world as being there to meet their needs. And understandably so. They don't have the ability to act for themselves, to advocate. I'm not saying they're completely helpless, because developmental psychologists have totally blown that myth up, as we see that kids are incredibly powerful infants at influencing their parents and getting with their parents to do what they want them to do. It's unbelievable how this 10-pound little creature can pull the strings and get mom or dad to dance and do the dance they want them to do with their limited resources, but they use them very well. Well, that manipulative ability continues on. We still think that we need to manipulate people to do what we want them to do for us to be okay. That's the stuckness. And that is a result of our immature culture, not just because we drank and used, but because no one in this culture knows how to grow up, because we're all stuck with it. So this is the stuff that Gabor Mate starts to get close to looking at. But even he doesn't grab the significance of this dependency thing, which is a critical issue.
Where do you come to this, Carol, or how do you come to it? How's it hitting you today?
I agree with absolutely everything Ellen just said. I wasn't drinking and drugging at 17. I just stayed arrested as a teenager and younger for decades. And I used to think that it was my workaholism that kept me from listening to myself and growing up. I think it interfered. But I think I was also on a survival drive. So it wasn't just wanting to check out. It was trying to secure a future after having suddenly become impoverished many years ago. So it was, but either way, it was a reaction, a maladaptation on the one hand, because I identified with it from my ego, but it was also survival on the other hand.
I'm glad you added that little bit, because there was a logic beyond just trying to numb yourself to getting after it. Yeah.
I thought I used to accuse myself of that, but now that I'm not working full time, I'm having an opportunity really to reflect. Being in this coaching program has helped me spend more time reflecting even more deeply as I learn to help clients think more deeply. I'm thinking more deeply, and I'm having deep conversations every few days. And that's been helping me grow up. It's just been incredible, because one of the things I have to do is be aware of my own biases and my own immaturity, so I don't bring that into our circle when we're working together. And I'm hearing, oh man, I will not live long enough to get rid of all the junk I have in there. And that's okay. But I'm having fun discovering more and more things that I need to clean house on. And it's not that I'm a bad person or I think poorly of myself. I'm just having fun growing up. It's exciting. And who knew that I would find it so non-threatening and enjoyable to be wrong about something on a regular basis and learn a new way. It's been delicious. So that's where I am on it. And I'd rather grow up at almost 75 than not to have grown up at all.
I always hope that my parents can have additional chapters where they get right with themselves and with the world. I know it's possible.
I've been getting a lot of inquiries about, well, how does emotional sobriety interface with our aging. Like, what is the impact that this has on it? And the really good news here is that as we get older, our bodies become more and more feeble, right? We become more and more fragile. We're not able to sustain and have the stamina, sustain physical activity like we used to when we were younger. And the recovery is a lot longer. So we're in a decline in terms of our bodies, right? In terms of our bodies are definitely slowing down as we get older. Now, the good news is, now that also affects our mind. We're not able to function as well as we were and think as clearly sometimes, and memory starts to slip. Today they have what they call the full brain theory, is that, to imagine that our ability to store information is limitless was a fantasy. Even today, they got 2 terabytes, right, of storage on a computer, which was unbelievable like 20 years ago. They'd never be able to store that information. They can't, but that's even got a limit to it, 2 terabytes. Well, we have a limit. We don't know what it is, but it's not limitless. We know that. So through life, more and more information gets stored. Well, guess what? When you reach your capacity, you got a full brain. You're not going to remember as much stuff because you don't have the storage and retrieval capabilities that you had when you were younger and your brain was pretty empty. And I know you're thinking, Dr. Berger, your head is pretty empty most of the time anyway. But that's another topic, Patrick. We'll get into that later. But what my point is that the one area that is not determined by age is your spiritual development and wisdom. That we have the possibility of continuing to grow in our wisdom, in our ability to cope with life, in developing a perspective, in bringing justice to situations where there's injustice, to bring compassion where there isn't any. I mean, that quest, Scott Peck called it the road less traveled, is available to us. And that's the good news with emotional sobriety. Emotional sobriety is about gaining that kind of wisdom.
Well, we get better too in relational intelligence as we age, because our already laid neural pathways recognize patterns quicker. And so we can generalize across several subjects, new learning, I'm finding, and I've read about it too. And then for me, part of this season is about less doing and more being, which is a spiritual concept. But I'm finding such profound joy and healing in allowing my being, since I have created a space where I can really let go of so much doing. And I'm identifying, I told Patrick the other night, my capital I am deliberately embracing as a lowercase I today. That's how I'm envisioning this season right now. I certainly still have my own sense of self. We all have egos and all that. That's part of my interface with my world, but I'm shrinking that as and it's not something that I think I can like check a box. I'm now going to shrink my ego. That's not how that works. But I'm finding more room for awareness beyond thinking. And it is so moving. I'm finding it to be very important and informative in my life. Just being is teaching me so much.
We spoke a little bit, and you had mentioned you might want to talk about it in the podcast. You were able to forgive somebody or to release somebody from your resentment. And this was something you were unable to summon the strength to do before. And this was fairly recently, right? Because I think that this ties in very nicely to what we're talking about with emotional sobriety and new possibilities.
Yeah, I'd love to share that. I was married from 1970 to 1979. The marriage ended in a volatile manner. I was surprised. I became impoverished. I was certainly not mature enough to understand yet how I would take care of a 4.5-year-old on my own. I'd never lived on my own. I was devastated and highly unskilled. We were two people who did what we think of from Jungian terms and others. We both married the person who represented our parent we had struggles with. And we stayed very unconscious through that marriage. There was love for a while, and then just a lot of acting out the previous family system drama. So we weren't really great partners for each other. But I certainly didn't expect that. So what happened is I carried that as my identity. He did me wrong. How awful it was. I suffered a long time. I believed his parting words as having something to do with who I really am, and wore that victim badge. And I'm not minimizing by saying that. I am not minimizing the devastation that was really there. Certainly, there was. But that was 45 years ago. So as I have seen him around family settings over the years, I've tensed up. Sometimes I check out mentally. Sometimes I'm angry by the time I get there, and full of judgment. And one of the things that this coaching program has taught me to look at is where I am not, and emotional sobriety, certainly accepting life on life's terms. Do I enter a room prejudging what's going to be there and have opinions about it? Or am I sitting back and really observing and taking in my environment? So I had this experimental idea. I wanted to go into my granddaughter's graduation weekend where I would see him for 2 days. I wanted to see if I could see him as I do consider my clients, through the eyes of God, before our breakup, before we even met, before Vietnam, before some family things that happened to him, before life happened. Just look at his essence without judgment. Could I do that? And I had a really deep coaching session with a friend of mine, and we explored any obstacles I might have to that experiment. And my desire to try that was greater than anything I could think of that could get in the way. This is not even about forgiveness. This is about just interacting with someone that I had prejudice about, in a moment of no judgment, no prejudice, just observe, just interact face to face. It was such a new place for me. Anyway, I got there and it worked. It worked to my utter delight. I did not have the first angry feeling. I did not feel bad. I admitted in my coaching session that I had always wanted him to suffer for what he had done to me. That's not a fun thing for me to admit. I'm good old Carol who doesn't like to hurt anybody. But the truth is, I wanted him to hurt for hurting me. That was gone. I just saw someone I used to know and care about, and we had such a good time. And when the expected, there was a bigoted remark that came out from him at one point, which was not a surprise. Instead of attaching to it, eye rolling, clucking my tongue, needing to leave the room, it's like the words floated up in the air and I watched them leave the room. And it was just information. It didn't define his worth. It didn't have anything to do with me. And I thought, oh my God, I'm doing it. I'm really in this place I didn't even know you could go. And we had a great weekend. His wife and I have always gotten along. This is not the wife that was a part of our old history.
That's good. It's for the
Yeah.
best, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. But so she and I have always been fine, but we were relaxed. And I can only imagine what a relief it had to be for him to sit with someone who's been pissed off for 45 years. And again, I say it with laughter today, but I'm not diminishing the fact that a real thing happened that I needed to get over. It was painful, it was rough, scary, but it didn't need to be 45 years. It didn't need to be another day.
You're describing, the discovery of a new possibility is showing up and being around him and keeping your center of gravity over your 2 feet instead of
Yes.
to him. I mean, see, that's it. It's a great example, Patrick. It's more about that than forgiveness. It's really not about forgiveness.
No.
It's about holding on to yourself and realizing that, we don't have to be overly influenced by other people and what they're doing or what they've done. I mean, Carol was able to show up in such a great way and keep her sense of self in her hand. She kept her emotional center of gravity over her 2 emotional feet and didn't give it to him. That's a new possibility.
I think it's one of the most exciting spiritual accomplishments of my entire life.
It's a huge thing.
And then I told my daughter the next day what happened, and she was delighted because part of what came up in the coaching session was not only would it free me and it would stop my attachment to previously unacknowledged desire for him to suffer, it would certainly take the weight off of her. And nobody acted out or anything, but there's no way to hide how you feel. If you're thinking it, it shows in some way. So it freed Becky too.
Now, this letting go of you said it was a 45-year
Yes.
resentment you had.
Yes.
Because people in the rooms always talk about, it was a spiritual experience or like there was a waking up moment and it was beyond my control or decision to do it. It just happened. Was that your experience of it? Or obviously you've done a ton of work around this over the years. So
I made a decision and I strategized how I would do it.
Mm-hmm.
And it was an experiment, though. I mean, I didn't know how it was going to come out. I just had this moment of inspiration, a commitment to the experiment. And while I didn't think about it a lot at the time, I think a sincere desire to just let go of one more thing. I was tired of spending the 2.5-hour drive in a knot. I was tired of staying tense. I was tired of being mad. I mean, I made it already. And for many reasons, we would both agree it wouldn't be a good idea for us to be married today. So it wasn't that I was even grieving that. It was just, so I don't know. But I think I put the intention out there and had a great opportunity. And I just believed in something beyond where I was. And I've been able to do that with clients. I've been practicing that. But to put it where the rubber meets the road, holy cow, that was something.
And it really filled you up, it sounds like.
I'm still filled up. I'm elated. And it's like good news you want to share with your friends. Hey, did you know this is even possible? I didn't.
Yeah, there it is. That's the discovery of a new possibility right there. Your anecdote is so apropos to what we're talking about today. And thank you for that very much.
Well, thank you for having me. I am so grateful for the emotional sobriety workshops over 5 years that have certainly helped me open up and grow up, and the Gestalt classes. Thank you.
And now you're accredited, right? You do have clients, right, Carol? So
will use some techniques from Gestalt class, but I'm not a therapist. I'm a coach. And
Got
so
it.
I need to make that clear, but it is one of my credentials that I'll have. And I'm very happy about that.